Imagine a World Cup where players spent 2 weeks crossing the Atlantic Ocean by ship just to reach the tournament. A tournament with only 13 teams. There were no qualification matches, no television broadcasts, and most European national teams didn't even want to participate. Yet this tournament marked the beginning of what would become the biggest sporting event on Earth. Today, we're traveling back to 1930 to discover the story of the very first FIFA World Cup. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. Why football needed a World Cup? By the beginning of the 20th century, football was growing rapidly in popularity. However, there was still no official world tournament for national teams. The best international teams only competed at the Olympic Games. But the Olympics belonged to the International Olympic Committee, not FIFA. FIFA President Jules Rimet dreamed of creating an independent international tournament where the world's best national teams would compete exclusively for the title of world champion. After years of discussions, his idea finally gained support. In 1928, FIFA officially announced that the first FIFA World Cup would take place just 2 years later. Why Uruguay was chosen? Today, it may seem surprising that the first World Cup wasn't held in Europe, but in the small South American nation of Uruguay. At the time, however, the decision made perfect sense. Uruguay had won back-to-back Olympic football tournaments in 1924 and 1928, and was widely considered the strongest football nation in the world. In addition, 1930 marked the 100th anniversary of Uruguay's first constitution. The Uruguayan government promised to build a massive modern stadium, cover the participating teams' accommodation, and even help pay for their travel expenses. No European country was willing to offer such generous conditions. As a result, FIFA awarded the tournament to Montevideo. Speaking of FIFA, the organization itself was founded in 1904 in Paris. At first, it consisted mainly of European football associations. Football was already becoming increasingly popular, but there was still no global tournament for national teams. The best teams could only compete at the Olympic Games, while FIFA wanted to create its own competition, independent from the Olympics and entirely dedicated to football. Why Europe didn't want to come? But then a major problem appeared. Most European national teams refused to participate. At that time, commercial flights across the Atlantic simply didn't exist. Players had to spend nearly 2 weeks traveling by ship. On top of that, Europe was still recovering from World War I while the Great Depression was beginning. For many football associations, such a long and expensive journey was simply impossible. Only after personal persuasion from Jules Rimet did 4 European teams finally agree to participate: France, Belgium, Romania, and Yugoslavia. The remaining teams came from North and South America. The journey across the Atlantic. It was probably one of the most unusual journeys in football history. Most of the European teams traveled to Uruguay aboard the same passenger liner, the Conte Verde. On board were players, coaches, referees, and even FIFA president Jules Rimet himself. The voyage lasted almost 2 weeks. The players trained right on the ship's deck. Instead of modern training facilities, they were surrounded only by the endless waters of the Atlantic Ocean. How the tournament was played. Only 13 national teams took part in the tournament. To this day, it remains the smallest World Cup in history. Because of the limited number of teams, there was no traditional knockout stage from the beginning. Instead, the teams were divided into 4 groups. The winners of each group advanced directly to the semifinals. The very first World Cup matches were played on July 13th, 1930. Interestingly, 2 matches kicked off at exactly the same time. France defeated Mexico 4-1, while the United States beat Belgium 3-0. The very first goal in FIFA World Cup history was scored by French forward Lucien Laurent. The final that made history. The final featured the host nation, Uruguay, against its longtime rival, Argentina. Around 68,000 spectators packed the stadium. Before kickoff, an unusual dispute broke out over which ball should be used. In the end, the first half was played with an Argentine ball, while the second half used a Uruguayan one. Argentina led 2-1 at halftime, but after the break, Uruguay completely turned the game around. They won 4-2, becoming the first FIFA World Cup champions in history. The Jules Rimet Trophy. The champions received the very first World Cup trophy. Years later, it became known as the Jules Rimet Trophy, honoring the man whose vision made the World Cup possible. This trophy was awarded to World Cup winners until 1970. After Brazil won the tournament for the third time, the trophy became the permanent property of the Brazilian Football Confederation. How it changed the world. Today, it's hard to imagine, but the first World Cup took place with virtually no television coverage. Fans followed the matches mainly through newspapers and radio broadcasts. No one could have imagined that. Decades later, the FIFA World Cup would become the biggest sporting event on the planet. Today, its audience reaches billions of viewers worldwide. The tournament now features 48 national teams. Broadcasting rights are worth billions of dollars, and it all began during the summer of 1930 in one small South American country. From a 2-week journey across the Atlantic by ship to billion-dollar stadiums, from just 13 teams to 48 national teams competing for football's greatest prize. The first FIFA World Cup changed football forever and marked the beginning of a tournament that now unites billions of people around the world. Which FIFA World Cup is the most memorable in your opinion? Let me know in the comments below. History is full of stories that shape the world we live in today. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. And stay tuned, another story is coming soon.